welcome to the Heat Beat Podcast. I'm your host, Giancarlo Navas, and with me today is my producer, co-founder, Brian Goins. Now, Brian's audio, I don't think is working right now. Brian, can you say something?
Something.
Oh my God, the audio works! Wow, at the buzzer, dude. That was so clutch. Holy shit. Good for you. That's producing. That is fixing stuff on the fly.
I did nothing.
Nothing. Okay, fine. We take those. Brian, his screen is on the bottom left if you're watching on twitch.tv/MIAHeatbeat or for the YouTube audience. Now for the YouTube audience, I think we might be using a different intro music because we have been cited for copyright for sampling Kanye in that intro. So I don't know what's going on going forward. We're going to figure that out. We're going to keep the intro. We're just going to figure out ways around this. On the left of my screen.
Wait, I thought the idea was to have Al say.
Well, why are you ruining the surprise, Brian? Why are you ruining the surprise for the audience? Okay? It's a surprise. We don't know what we're going to do left. On the left of the screen, we have our statistician and professional photoshopper, Christian Hernandez.
What's up, everybody? Sorry for the terrible connection. You know, things are difficult over here in Colorado.
Yeah, where are you? You like in a cabin in the mountains? What the hell's going on?
I basically am. It is very isolated out here, and I feel very safe.
I feel like COVID is very far away from you.
This glitch theme that we have going, so...
Yeah, you're kind of like glitching in and out, which I think it matches just the general aesthetic of our Twitch.
I'm out here scouting in the mountains of Colorado. I'll have some reports later on.
You need to find the Heat a power forward that can defend Giannis. Because joining us today, first time on the program, host of the Gyro Step podcast, also on our Blue Wire family, Ty Windisch. I should have asked you for your last name. I asked you for your first name. I didn't ask you how to say your last name. How do you say your last name?
Windisch. It's a Windisch. Double threat name pronunciation I have going on.
So scary. Oh my God, I was horrified. A second, I was like, I went through the Gyro Step, the Blue Wire, and I got to your name, and I was like, no, I forgot to ask. I'm bad with names. Just the chat knows that. People know that. Longtime listeners of the pod know that. So we're welcoming Ty in to preview a little Heat Bucks. So the Heat have played a couple games. Milwaukee has played a couple games, and now it's an Eastern Conference semifinal rematch. Honestly, that feels like the conference finals. That feels like the big win because, like, the Celtics, we don't even. I mean, I feel like as a series, we all remember the Bucks, right, Christian? I feel like we remember the Bucks series more.
Yeah, well, I think just because, like, I think it was really the Bucks series that kind of let the fan base realize, oh, this is like a real run, you know, because you just knocked off the biggest contender in the East. I think by the time we got to the Celtics series, we're like, okay, they can definitely do this. So I feel like the initial shock of pulling it off definitely made it a much more memorable series as a Heat fan.
So I guess for Ty, I kind of want to start because obviously, like, the offseason, kind of the beginning of the season, there was some chatter about the Heat kind of fluking their way into a finals appearance. And I think that there's something to be said about, they didn't have to play a road game or whatever, but I kind of want your perspective as somebody who covers the Bucks. Did you feel like what the Heat did was somehow anomalous?
I wouldn't say that, and I don't like the fluke word either. I think, like, the first thing, like, the bubble stuff all happened, right? Like, it's not... I don't think you can take anything away from any of the great performances or teams of the bubble, right? Like, I know people have said the same kind of idea about, like, what Jamal Murray especially and also Donovan Mitchell did. Like, does it count? Like, yeah, it counts. I mean, you need to see it more from those guys to continue proving themselves, but what they did certainly counts. That's how I feel about the Heat, too. Do I think the circumstances were probably better for Miami than a lot of teams? Not just because of the Florida thing, but because, like, this is just a team that grinds and that's their culture. I mean, that helps all the time. But I remember, like, early, like, game 1, game 2 of the series, there was, like, this video the Heat put out of, like, all the guys working out from home together and grinding super hard. And the story we'd gotten from the Bucks, like, they didn't really practice hard their first couple weeks in the bubble. They really eased their way back in. And I think both teams kind of played like it in the conference finals and kind of helped decide it. So I think the Heat certainly played better than the Bucks. Do I think, in a more typical setting, do the Bucks have a better chance? Probably, but I don't think it swings the series. Just the way Milwaukee played, they weren't prepared enough. We've seen the same issues kind of haunt Giannis and the Bucks in other tough postseason matchups. I think the Heat were good enough to win outside of the bubble as well. I do think it was an advantageous situation, but everybody had to play in the same circumstances. The Heat just adapted to it better. I don't think you should take anything away from them for that.
So something that I find interesting about kind of if you compare the Raptors series from the year before and then the Heat series from last season, the Raptors, what really changed is the Bucks couldn't really score in the half court, right? And obviously Toronto had a defense that had Marc Gasol, Ibaka, Kawhi Leonard, Lowry, Van Vliet, you know, OG wasn't there, but you know, all these plus big, long, fast, intelligent defenders. And the thing that the Heat were able to do was just torch their defense. I think that the Bucks, their offense wasn't as clean as you'd want, but I don't think that, you know, you ever saw that, okay, like they're really struggling to kind of score here. But it was more that the Heat were shredding the drop scheme. And I know that, you know, I think that the adjustment stuff is put a little too hard on Bud, because I know in the Raptor series he did adjust a little bit. And in the Heat, he just really stuck more to his guns. I did think it was weird, Ty, maybe you can tell me this, like why they wouldn't switch some of the bigger handoffs, but every time Jimmy put George Hill in a pick and roll, they were switching that. That's the one decision that I never really understood.
I mean, the one, if we're just talking about decisions we never understood, for me, it's still like not playing Wes in the closing minutes of, I think, is it 1 and 3 games, 1 and 3 or whatever, 2 games it was, where like Jimmy like killed him, you know, both fourth quarters and won the series in both fourth quarters. And I mean, Wes did a really good job on Jimmy. I don't have the numbers. I don't have the advanced stats. I remember from watching it, I'm sure if you pulled it up, the numbers would reflect this. Like when Wes guarded Jimmy, Jimmy was like fine to good or really just not making that outsized of an impact. When anybody else guarded him, he was freaking incredible. And the same guy we saw, you know, go tear up the finals too. So like, not like Wes would have held him to nothing. I'm sure Jimmy would have tried to score more in those situations anyway. But regardless, as far as like the switching and when they do, when they don't, I don't know, guys. I don't have a good answer for you. I've been trying to figure out why Bud does Bud things for a long time. It's really hard to do. You'll see some variations where it makes sense. You'll see some where it doesn't. And then most of the time you'll just see none. So I don't really have a good reason. I mean, I think the defense against Miami was tough. I think the Bucks maybe just didn't believe that the shooters were as good as they were. I mean, like the thing coming in for me too, and I guess to in fairness to Bud, like I didn't expect Jay Crowder to continue to be this guy, and it didn't really last all that long.
Okay, I was gonna say it was the Bucks series where Jay Crowder shot like 45% from 3, right?
He was bad every other series.
Yeah. But he picked a good one to be good. And it really, I mean, it kind of feeds into it if he's getting a lot of good looks. I mean, that helps. But I think offensively, like not having better answers to what Miami did was probably even more killer from Milwaukee. Like I never would have expected Crowder to be able to be a primary on Giannis. I mean, going into the series, I remember thinking, well, you'll get to a place where Bam has to be the guy who guards him. And then maybe you can open up some more stuff off ball. The Bucks never really got there. So I think that was a huge issue for Milwaukee as well. And I think like their one thing was the Chris Giannis pick and roll, and Miami had the defenders to just switch it, and then they had nothing else. So I think the lack of ingenuity on both ends continues to be something that killed the Bucks. It definitely did in that series. It probably will in these 2 games coming up as well, because we're so early into this new season. We haven't seen them have a lot of time to experiment yet.
So chat's asking, wasn't Jay really good versus Indiana? I'm pretty sure he was like 35% in that series.
No, yeah, he shot about 30, about around 35%. He only had 2 games.
I remember it being
40%.
Pedestrian, average. I mean that's an league average shooter. To your point about the Jay stuff, and we're gonna get into that now, kind of previewing their little mini series. I like to call them mini series, right? They're little back to back little mini series. He's a guy, and I've been thinking about this a lot, Ty, because, you know, they have Mo Harkless now, and they have kind of this weird kind of void at power forward that they can't guard bigger, but like they're a lot quicker, right? And like Jay couldn't really stay in front of dudes. Like I've watched tons of Phil Jay play defense, and he switch onto a quicker guy and him just get completely beat. He's just not that fast, but like he's so good positionally, and he knows that helps coming. So by Bam coming over to help instead of being on ball with Giannis, right, kind of leaving those other guys, I think that makes a difference. I'm surprised too that they didn't go Bam on the ball more, but it really worked out, and I think that he's so destructive as a help defender. It's crazy. So kind of looking ahead to what we have the Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-back. I know that the Bucks came off a really weird game against the Knicks that we caught the little bit pre-show. I feel like we kind of throw that out the window when, you know, Elfrid Payton's hitting a bunch of jumpers. Jimmy's not playing for the first game, right? So I think it's going to be hard to take a lot out of this. But if you're Milwaukee, like, you know, I don't know how much you know about like Precious and their big situation. Like, is that, I don't know how maybe you feel about that going in, you know, with kind of these quicker, more nimble bigs against Lopez and all that. Like, that's to me the matchup that I'm really looking at early because we're not going to have Jimmy.
Yeah, I don't know a ton. I haven't gotten to watch a lot of Miami so far this season. I did catch a pretty good amount of the Christmas game, and Precious seemed, I guess, intriguing is the right word, right? Like, you can certainly see the upside and what the team anticipates him to do. You can tell it's not all the way there yet either, which is kind of how rookies go when you have like 2 days of camp or whatever. I think the Lopez matchup will be interesting. He hasn't looked great for most of the season. I think he's looked a little slow, and Bucks Twitter's already convinced he's washed and he's done. I'm not there. I mean, I thought
2
he was
games
like,
in.
I love the beginning of the season. Always
I know,
just
right?
hyperbolic.
Yep, absolutely. Every team that's 3-0 right now is for sure confirmed to be a top 2 seed, right? Isn't
The
that
Cavs are going to the finals. Let's go.
Cavs
They're going
Magic
back.
Eastern Conference Finals? It's a throwback.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, it sounds terrible. I want no part of it. But I'm not there. I mean, he was so good against Miami. He was one of the few Bucks where I really walked away from that series going, okay, I trust Brook Lopez. Like, he did everything all over. I think he's a little older. He's a big guy. I feel like he's kind of ramping up into action. So hoping to see him get better as the season goes on. But I think he might have some trouble with the quicker bigs for sure. I think what'll be interesting, of course, is just like last time, I want to look at who guards Giannis and how do they do. I mean, Jay Crowder was so good at it. As you mentioned, I think Bam certainly can do it, but if you can keep him as the help defender, all the better, right? Like, that's an embarrassment of riches on the defensive end. So I'm really intrigued to see how they handle Giannis this time around. I think Giannis has had a frustrating start to the year for him. He hasn't really gotten to uncork it. I mean, you could probably look at the stats and say I'm crazy, but he hasn't really found his rhythm yet either. Chris Middleton, the one guy who really has. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like, I'm just kind of, as a Bucks person right now, waiting for a breakthrough. Like, I think there's going to be a game when they kind of start to click and they'll probably go on a run. I don't really expect it against either of these Miami games. I think they're still kind of figuring things out. They're still integrating the new guys. And the process is going okay, I would say. But we've seen what kind of a matchup Miami is for the Bucks. Maybe they'll look good in this game 1 if Jimmy's out. Game 2, though, with Jimmy, I still, especially at this early point in the season, I think Miami is in a better situation than the Bucks right now. I would expect them to at least win one of these games, maybe even take both of them. Although it is hard to win against the same team back to back.
So, Christian, I actually thought that, like, so the point that Ty's making about, like, who's going to guard Giannis. So I know we've kind of covered a lot about the Mo Harkless situation, right? So I have some numbers. When Mo Harkless is on the court, the defense is 104. When he's off the court, the defense is about 106. So it's about 2 points better with him on, which has been a little surprising. However, the Heat are 14 points better when he's off than on. He's minus 15 net rating on, and then plus 14 net rating off, which is, I don't know how to feel about that. That's just concerning, man. He's not been great.
No, yeah, and as Ty was talking about, the role that Jay played, and not only guarding Giannis, I'm actually looking at the NBA stats matchup data from that series last playoffs, and it's actually amazing to me that Jay was actually was guarding Middleton also almost the same amount as he did Giannis. He was guarding their 2 best players to the tune of defending 60 field goal attempts in a 5-game series against both of those guys combined, while holding Giannis to 40% from the field and Middleton also to 40% from the field. That's very impressive considering you have 2 elite offensive talents. So the real question for Miami going up against Milwaukee now is, how are they going to replace those Jay Crowder minutes defensively? And obviously, can they continue to have that whoever that player is contribute with the 40-something percent threes that he was shooting in that series as well? He played a massive role in that series.
The Middleton thing is interesting because, like, especially the first game without Jimmy, that would be Yimmy. I made him Cuban. The first game without Jimmy, I don't like Duncan and Tyler. That's a lot to ask out of them. I don't even know who the hell would start. I mean, you'd have Mo Harkless they might go big, right? So they might go Myers Bam. I think that might be the move so that you could just slot Mo Harkless into the 3 spot if Jimmy's not gonna play. But it's gonna be that's tough, and I think you can probably get away with that because you can kind of keep Myers on Brook Lopez, and it's not like Brook's a mover, right? As long as Myers stays still, I mean, he's fine and drop, right? You know, he'll screen and roll, and Myers will drop, and they'll be okay, right? Depending on who the guard is, if it's Tyler or Duncan or whatever. Like I don't know, Chris. Like that's the part that kind of stresses me out.
Yeah,
Chris has been the MVP of the team so far. Not to cut off, but he's been so good, and it's been needed, like to even keep Bucks in games. So that's been awesome to see. Dante DiVincenzo's been really, really good. So it'll be interesting to see. I feel like him and Tyler Herro kind of had a little back and forth in the series. I feel like they were both kind of jostling to be like the scrappy white dude that is actually good. And I think Herro got the better of him in the playoffs as a whole, but Dante's coming out uncorked this year, man. Dante looks terrific. So it'll be interesting. I think going big for Miami probably is the move here, just because in addition to, probably going to be able to just throw Myers on Brook Lopez. And I mean, Brook Lopez, I think, could absolutely torch Myers Leonard, but the Bucks don't go to him a lot for that inside offense, right? Like if they did, they could maybe make that a problem. But on the other end, if the Bucks are steadfastly sticking to the drop coverage, then like having Myers do pick and pops and stuff could be really effective for Miami. So that seems like, honestly, something I thought we would see more of in the series. I know his minutes didn't go great, if I recall, in the semis. I think they kind of just tested it out and like went away from it pretty quickly. I think it could work though, still theoretically. So it'll be interesting to see if they do that and just go to pop him a bunch, how the Bucks react, if they switch it up right away, or if they let Myers Leonard take like 10 open threes over 3 quarters or something.
Yeah, the Myers Bam lineups have really good regular season numbers, but I think in a playoff setting when they're trying to switch, you just Myers doesn't allow you to have that flexibility. So Jay and Bam, obviously, especially that 4-5 stuff, you can really move. Chat saying they want to see how KZ defends Giannis. They want him out of Spo prison, out of Heat prison. Spo, I don't.
Are you aware that we have a baby Giannis on our team?
Yeah, he's baby
just
Giannis.
One? I thought you guys had like 3 or 4 at this point.
Well, hear me out. We have the goal is to have 5 Bams.
5 Bams.
Well, apparently KZ, according to Solomon Hill, was pretty much practice squad Giannis when we were preparing for the playoff matchup last year.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm excited.
He doesn't get any playing time. That's the only problem. Like I'm super upset on Twitter because like we traded 3 second-round picks for him. He had his best game, the last game of the preseason, because we only played 2 preseason games against the Toronto Raptors, against their starting unit. He went like 6 for 10 from 3.
Torched them.
23 points, like playing solid defense on Fred VanVleet, switching on the perimeter and stuff, and then he doesn't get any minutes.
We're so mad, Ty. We're so
Freaking
Twitter's in shambles. We can't even have a finals run and come back happy. No, we're yelling at Coach. We're yelling at Coach Spo. We want Alex Toledo a 5 on the floor to make him accountable. It's just upset. Somebody needs to hold Spo. Huh?
Correction. Woody1547 said 24 points, Brian.
So thanks, chat, for correcting us. Yeah, like that's the guy I think would be good on Giannis because he's a big, long guy. He's strong. He won't get pushed. Like Mo is not a strong dude. Like Mo's gonna. Man, I feel bad. Like if they have Giannis defending him, it's like when they put Derrick Jones Jr. on Giannis. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry for Derrick. Like Giannis is too strong. Derrick is so skinny, and Derrick tries so hard, and then Giannis just bulldozes him because Giannis is a fucking freak of nature. He's like Shaq. Like physically, he's like fucking Shaq. It's crazy. And Shaq with a spin move.
He put on 50 to 60 pounds of muscle since his rookie year, which is just so wild. I mean, I know he was really small, but it's still just a number that blows my mind every time. Yeah, I wonder if this would be maybe if things aren't going well for the first plan to defend Giannis, if then maybe Spo would break the glass. I know Bucks Twitter is in a very similar furor over Jordan Nwora and Sam Merrill, which it sounds ridiculous for guys picked 45 and 60, but they actually look awesome. Like they both look like legit shooters. Merrill's got some off the dribble sauce. Nwora's got some size, and Pat Connaughton is still just Pat Connaughton. It turns out, helping to get Giannis signed did not give him any attribute bonuses. So he's still Pat, but he's still playing a lot, and it's the same deal. Bucks Twitter is like, try Bud for treason against the world right now for denying us Sam Merrill and Jordan Nwora minutes. And they're starting to win me over. So I feel like I feel
Let's
you guys on the
go.
KZ hype.
Let's go. Well, Ty, like, so Ty and I are in like some blue checkmark NBA Twitter group chat, right? I feel finally like I've made it. And I was saying, I was like, oh, this KZ Okpala, should probably start over Mo Harkless. And the blue checkmark said, no, Mo Harkless is a veteran rotation player. He's been on good teams before. Somebody said that Mo Harkless, KZ was the worst G League player or something like that. I felt so defeated.
He did
I crawled
not
back.
have a great G League season.
Oh, it was awful.
There were a lot of people that were down on him like halfway through the year last year before he got hurt.
Because like in his G League games, he had like 20 G League starts. He hit like 15 or 16 threes, and literally in 2 preseason games, he had like 10.
I know, but he's good. I have the vision. I see it. I see what's there. Nobody else does. Blue checkmarks don't see it like we see it. We sound crazy. I know. This is what happens when you lose Jay Crowder for nothing.
His corner threes are pretty much like almost better than PJ Tucker.
I mean, like Ty, like it legitimately, like they have such a vacuum of power forward that it's kind of alarming considering like this is obviously a good team. Like the Heat are good. They're gonna be good in the regular season. They have continuity. They have a really good fucking player in Jimmy Butler. Goran Dragic is scorching earth again. Thank God. I was so scared after the injury.
Have we talked about the fact that Jimmy is doubtful for Tuesday?
Yes. Yeah, well, he's not.
Okay, because that's going to play a big role as well. I mean, Spo likes to play smaller, and if he doesn't have Jimmy Butler there to play the 4 occasionally, it kind of forces his hand to play. We might see. We might.
That's
see
why we said that they were going to go big with Myers. Like Myers,
I feel like they
Bam.
have to go with KZ since he can space a little bit, but we might see some Precious Bam, Myers Leonard, Precious Bam, Kelly Olynyk.
We're definitely going to see Kendrick in that minutes. That's for sure.
So I'm curious as to if they go Precious Bam. I just don't really see how that works. So I don't think they've played a minute of action. Yeah, they haven't played at all together yet. They've really liked Precious and Kelly Olynyk.
They did in the preseason though, twice.
Yeah, they played like 2 minutes. Yeah.
See, that's tough against Milwaukee, right? Because Milwaukee wants to be able to ignore 3-point shooting and just crowd the rim. And I don't think like putting 2. I don't know. I assume Precious is mostly a non-shooter. I don't know.
He's a roll man.
Okay, yeah. So, like, at that point, like, you're just making Brook Lopez and Giannis also their life really easy, and I think that could make it pretty tough for Miami offensively.
So, like, the KO Precious lineups are good, right? They're outscoring teams by, like, 7 points per 100 possessions. Obviously, we're playing with incredibly small samples. It looks good. In theory, it works because, Precious would guard the 5-man, and KZ would Precious would guard the 4s, KZ would guard the 5s, but Precious is the 5 on offense. Triggers the handoffs, kind of screens, dives. Olynyk's a shooter. They kind of do some fun action where they do like these reverse handoffs and they do like lots of fun stuff. So that's something that I think that Spo's really leaned into because like Christian, they haven't really gone KO plus other big for a long time. They just, after a certain point, it was just Myers and Bam, and then after that, it was just exclusively, one big plus, Jay Crowder or, Derek or whatever, right? So they kind of seem to be trending back to playing a little bit bigger, and I think this is probably the game to do it. On the guard side, so Goran is Goran again, which is good because, that injury was really scary. I think like the Bucks are like a team where like Kendrick Nunn is also really helpful if he can like hit a jumper because he will have that little pull up and he can get to a spot really easily. I think that's like his best skill as a player. Like he can really get to that kind of 15 foot pull up like when he wants. It's just
he's short on every single shot though. That's the only issue.
He looks bad. Like it's like concerning. That's the other thing. Like in the regular season, like he was just eating minutes, and while he wasn't good defensively, like he was gonna be good for like kind of getting some baskets and kind of very consolidated minutes. So Avery Bradley looks good, but he's obviously not the scorer. Like it's kind of tough if their guards can't really hit those pull-ups. Like they
need Tyler to do it. That's for sure.
And like
especially if he's starting again, which I don't even. Do you think he'll keep starting?
See, that's the other thing.
Something that we were posing because obviously after the Pelicans game, we noticed that like Dragic was running the offense much better than Herro was. Practically,
he's not a point guard.
Well,
I mean, going up against Drew Holiday is going to be a tough ask.
And then I think Avery Bradley would be helpful just defensively.
Yeah, like the Bucks defense is going to be any better. Like it's going to be awful for him. Like he's too small and he doesn't like the thing with Tyler is he's obviously like a good player, but he doesn't get a lot of separation when he drives, and his pull-up jumper is not as good as it should be. Right? Like I think if you look at how he does against drop defenses, it's not great. And evidenced by that Lakers series, that like he was just awful every time AD dropped. It was just he had the cushion and just could not take advantage. He can get to the rim and he can get downhill, and he does create space because he is a good shooter and he can get to a pull up like with a head of steam. But it's just tough for him to pull up from three. I like him off the bench more, Christian. Like I went through like multiple phases of who should start last game. I was like, no, I tweeted out, Goran is the starter. Goran won the starting job. And then I was like, never mind Avery Bradley. Because like Tyler just plays better with the off guard. Like as long as he's not triggering pick and rolls, he reminds me a lot of like Jay Rich, right? Like Josh couldn't initiate sets and he couldn't bend the defense, but he could always attack a bent defense. And I think that's perfect I think Tyler will grow into a guy that can really trigger pick and rolls and kind of bring the ball up and stuff like that. But it's just so much better when they bring him off of pistol and all that other stuff than when he's just bringing the ball up and it's like, okay, somebody come screen for him.
No, absolutely. And especially, I mean, obviously the last game that we saw was the Christmas Day game against the Pelicans. But it was such a glaring difference in that game when they took Tyler out and when they brought Goran in, and the way that I mean, obviously the entire game shifted, but especially offensively, Goran is just playing with an incredible amount of confidence. He's getting to wherever he wants to go, and he's honestly making the game look really easy right now, which I'm shocked with. I know that the injury that he had back in the playoffs wasn't that severe. It was just obviously that kept him out for the finals. But obviously he's no spring chicken anymore, and he's looking incredible out there. So it's tough because Spo historically does not take starting lineup decisions lightly. He usually doesn't like to mess with the starting lineup too much, which also kind of tells me that I expect him to move forward with the lineup that he used against the Pelicans, knowing that he's going against a few teams that have a good amount of size. But yeah, it's going to be a tough decision for him because so far, I don't know if the trade rumors are getting in his head, but Tyler, he's occasionally making mistakes out there, and then he gets tentative. He just gives the ball up and kind of plays himself out of the play. And if he's going to be playing point guard for this team, he needs to be involved in every possession.
Like Ty, if you're the Bucks, like you look at Miami's guard situation, and if you're looking at what worries you, are you with me that it's like, okay, it's the guys that can get to the pull-ups, or is there something else that maybe would kind of be more of a weakness for them?
I think for the Bucks, it's definitely, I mean, anyone who can hit threes, but especially like a consistent pull-up jumper is such a big threat to the Bucks because they do like to drop. That is, like, aside from threes, probably the place that you will get the most space, right, is the mid-range. I mean, if the Bucks are okay with three-point shots, they're super okay with anybody taking mid-rangers. So, like, I think that's a place that players can actually hurt them a bit. Like, I know Nunn has just been, like, I don't even know how to describe it since, I mean, bad
toilet.
Is it good?
Toilet.
Which is weird.
Garbage.
Didn't he end up first team all-rookie?
Second and rookie of the year voting.
Second and rookie of the year
I'm not
voting.
exactly sure if either of that was deserved, but it did happen.
Well, because he was, like, before the shutdown, he was really good, right? Like, I mean, that was funny now, but
I mean, maybe to the outside world.
Okay,
early in the
fair.
season, he was playing strong. He absolutely was.
Yeah, that's it's just, it seems funny now because it feels like a billion years ago.
It was
that's how 2020 is.
It was very Zach LaVine. His numbers felt very Zach LaVine, like baby Zach LaVine.
Yeah, which a useful player, right? More useful than I guess he's become now. I don't watch a lot of Kendrick.
100%.
Because
at least
he was great against lottery teams, and he would just stink it up against like good playoff teams.
It was the 3-point shooting. Like, he was like a decent spot up shooter. It was like 37. There was this point in the season where he was like shooting like 42% from three, like spot up. So
yeah.
But actually, it's interesting. Sorry, I just was looking this up since we're talking about shooting off the dribble. I mean, Tyler's been pretty bad in the first two games this season, but the only bright spot he has had is that he's shooting 59% effectively from the field, effective field goal percentage on jumpers off the dribble. That actually puts him top 10 in the league. Obviously, there's very few guys that have taken 10 reps at this point, but he's been efficient so far.
He's not Kelly Oubre. I'll give him that.
No.
Only dunks through 2 games or whatever.
It's bad. Have you seen those games? Not that we're a Suns podcast, but like, Jesus.
I saw one of them.
I'm pretty sure he's on the Warriors, Janny.
That's what I said.
You said
Suns.
Suns.
I'm
You
sorry.
said Suns.
I just said Suns. I know he's on the Warriors. I know.
Sorry.
Yes, I'm very much rooting for Steph. Yeah.
No, but I think they need the Heat need one of Herro or Goran out there. I don't want to say at all times because I know Bam is a good playmaker, especially for his position. But I feel like only Bam, if you're talking about like Bam and then Duncan, Myers Leonard, and Oh my goodness, the name's escaping me. The defensive guard that you guys just talked about.
Avery Bradley.
Yeah, AB. I'd like Bam with none of Herro, Gorin. Like, I just don't know if they're going to get enough playmaking out of that. Like, that's the tough part about losing Jimmy, who's like everything to the team at once except a sharpshooter, basically. So I don't know. I think they're going to need to play either Gorin or Herro. I think it feels to me like the whole game, and they're going to need Herro to be good. Otherwise, I just worry about that playmaking vacuum for them. Like, Avery Bradley will be useful, but I don't know how useful, right? Like, I don't know who on the Bucks he's really going to be able to clamp. I mean, I probably could do a good job on Drew Holiday. I don't know how impactful that'll be. Like, Drew hasn't been a main scorer for the team so far. He's really focused on defense and then just kind of a change of pace guy. He'll go get 2 points in the paint when he needs to. I don't think Bradley is big enough for Chris. He's certainly not big enough for Giannis. So I don't know how much he will add unless he decides to become Jay Crowder and just hit 40% on high volume from three against the Bucks, which I wouldn't care for that very much.
So what happened against the Knicks just recently?
Yeah, okay, that is in play.
Anomalous.
After I saw Elfrid Payton and Ntilikina do it. It is in play.
Okay, so I have some numbers on Tyler, and we're gonna get out of here in a second. But so with Herro on the floor and Dragic off, their offense is a 95 offensive rating. They're minus 15 per 100 possessions. When Goran's on without Tyler, they're plus 24 net rating with a 130 offensive rating. Now, when Goran and Tyler share the floor, they have a 104 offensive rating and a 17 net rating. That number is a little weird because they have an 86 defensive rating, and that's sure as hell not them. But
yeah,
I do think there's something to be said about the offense just being completely in the fucking toilet when Tyler's running it. In 43 minutes this season, the offense is a 95 offensive rating, which is just awful. Yeah. He's just not that kind of playmaker. And to me, I think that's, again, 43 minutes, incredibly small sample. Nothing matters. The Cavs are in first place in the East, right? People think Andre Drummond's good again. I will not fall for it. But that's kind of where we are. The last thing I wanted to talk about, Ty, before we get out of here is
James Harden?
kind of the Bam. What'd you say, Brian?
James Harden.
No, we're not talking. This is a James Hardenless show.
Bro, he looked great.
James Hardenless show.
I need him on this fucking team.
We've done nothing but talk about James Harden for a month.
40 points, 17 assists on like plus 70% true shooting.
With a beer belly.
He's James Harden. He's James Harden.
With a beer belly.
Who's surprised by this? You still can't.
And after the game, he was like, "Yeah, I'm not in shape." It's just matter of fact.
Give him all the croquetas he wants. I don't give a fuck. Just bring him to Miami.
He's very good. So the last thing, Ty, I wanted to kind of get out of you was, so Miami's favorite pet play and my favorite thing in the world right now is the Duncan Bam handoff. Yeah. It is last season, I said this a bunch on the podcast, there were like 1.3 points per possession every time they did that action. That's fucking crazy. Insane. Duncan's very good. Duncan, listen, as of right now, maybe he's the best shooter in the league. I don't know. Who's to say?
What do you mean you don't know? Of course you know.
I mean, Steph had a game yesterday. I don't want to be slanderous, you know. Steph had the little sidestep dribble three. It's really good. No, but like legit, like
it's the Bulls. Yeah.
Like as a spot up guy and as a movement guy, like, you know, obviously not like an on ball shooter, but like right now he's like as good as anybody in the league shooting the ball. And that Bam Duncan handoff is really the basis of everything that they do offensively. Now the Bucks did a great job of just trailing him, kind of going over screens hard. Wes Matthews was just incredible at that. They tried Chris Middleton to do that. Kind of wondering who you think they have chasing Duncan around next game, because I really think, especially without Jimmy, their offense is gonna a lot of the time come from that.
It's gonna be super interesting. So they've used Wes, as you mentioned, was kind of the number one perimeter defender. He picked up a lot of their toughest assignments last year. He's obviously gone now and barely playing in LA. And not to like, that's not like, I'm not trying to discredit. I think he's probably still good. They just haven't used him much, whatever. They've been using Chris Middleton now as the number one guy, which is kind of a fascinating thing, right? Because it felt like he has kind of fallen. I don't want to say fallen off, like he's been bad, but he hasn't focused as much on defense since picking up so much offensive load in the last 2-3 years. So it's kind of fascinating to watch them have him do more, and he's still been really good offensively. I kind of wonder if they're going to switch that up at all or just keep it going. So if I had to guess, I would probably guess that Chris starts on him, assuming Miami goes with two bigs, Brook Lopez on one, Giannis on the other. It wouldn't shock me, though, to see Dante DiVincenzo pick up some time, just because he is more of a, fight through every screen kind of ball of energy player. And he's really good at like picking off passes in the first place. I think that's the best way to guard Duncan Robinson, is to not even let him get the damn ball. I mean, I think I've seen him hit threes when he's like super tightly closed coverage. I don't think it matters that much to him. So I think Dante could be a good option. Just try to deny the ball in general. So personally, I'd probably like to see Dante, because it all depends who Miami plays. I think fully healthy, I like probably Chris on Jimmy a little bit more, unless they go Drew Holiday on him, which so far they've kept Drew to guarding more actual guards, not just any perimeter offensive players. So long story short, I would imagine we'd see some Chris. I hope for the Bucks' sake we see some Dante DiVincenzo, because I think he could be an ideal defender, because you're not worried about getting super overpowered, right? Like, I don't think Duncan's going to back anybody up and make him barbecue chicken very often. Maybe he could. He's got the shooting touch to probably post up from anywhere, half court, for God's sakes. But I would like to see that. I do think we'll see some Chris at some point, though. He did a pretty good job, like you mentioned, on him in the playoffs.
The Bucks did the best job of anybody with Duncan, which I thought was shocking, because like they were, the big is dropped. Like Lopez, every time Bam sets that screen, Lopez is dropping. And I'm like, well, okay, like theoretically, like Duncan's going to come off and he's going to have the space. And what Wes and Middleton did was they closed that so fucking fast and so tightly that Duncan could not even get up into the shooting motion, right? He was just, and I say this a lot, but they end up flipping that into another handoff and what I call the revolving door of handoffs. The Lakers couldn't do it, even with Caruso as good as he is.
It's the one benefit, right, of the Bucks, like always doing that kind of stuff on ball screens. Like that's the other aspect of their drop. Their perimeter players are so good and get so much practice at fighting through those screens and trying to prevent those high value shots from being taken. So that's the payoff of that, right? And I think that is, I guess, one positive aspect to the defense that makes all of us pull our hair out all the time over on Bucks Twitter.
Like, it's so, like, they do it so well. Like, the Celtics tried everything. The Celtics are like, okay, Jalen's going to run around. Marcus is going to switch that. They tried everything, and none of it worked. The only other team that defended it as well was Raptors, but that's because they have an extraterrestrial as OG Anunoby that can switch and front and do all sorts of wild shit. Kristen, before we get out of here, we're going to plug some stuff, but I kind of want to get your predictions on starters, because, again, Tuesday, Jimmy's probably not going to play, it looks like. So what do you think is going to be with Miami's? Because I have a wacky prediction.
I am going to go with the kind of point I made earlier, that I believe that Spo really doesn't like to change what he does. So I would expect him to roll out the lineup that he rolled out to start the second half against the Pelicans, which was Herro, Robinson, Iguodala, Bam, and Myers Leonard.
Yeah, if he does that, I'll be really upset. Brian, do you have a prediction?
Taking James Harden at point.
You're such a fucking asshole. I hate you so much. I think, listen, I'm going to go wacky here, because I think that Tyler has been so fucking bad these two games. I think he's not starting. And I think because Jimmy's not going to play, they need someone to create offense. So it's going to be Goran, Duncan, Mo Harkless, Myers, and Bam. I think that, to me, I see Ty nodding, that makes sense.
It makes sense to me too. I have no idea if it'll happen. I have less insight than any of you on what actually works. One thing I'm a little curious about, I don't know if we're running too much on time. Why Harkless over Iguodala? Is it just like resting Iggy for the playoffs type deal, or has he not been as good defensively?
I don't want Andre guarding bigger people than him. He's not good at it. But Spence seems to feel otherwise.
Well, he might just not have options either.
I mean, KZ Okpala is waiting on the bench.
True.
Christopher, you made a face when he said that.
What he said? What about KZ?
About Andre? Why are they not using Andre?
Oh, I mean, I think he's right. I think it has to do with the fact that it's the regular season. I was actually trying to look it up real quick. I would bet that Andre probably played less in the regular season than he did in the playoffs last year, and I would probably expect Spo to try to do the same thing, because he doesn't need him in the regular season. We know.
Chad's saying, Chad, I don't mean Andre at the 3 is bad. I mean Andre playing up. Now, Andre at the 3, but with, kind of Bam and Tyler running the offense, I don't like, because Tyler's going to need space. And if you have, if you're running Bam and him pick and roll, you have you have a guy that you can really help off of. So that's kind of where I'm iffy with Iguodala starting. But that could very well be what we get. Ty, do you want to give people your Twitter at, where they can find you, where they can find your incredible Bucks podcast?
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate the kind words. So my Twitter ad is just my name, so at Ty Windisch, and it is spelled weird, TIWINDISCH, and I will plug everything, anything then, many, many times, trust me. But the podcast is called Euro or Gyro Step, however you want to say it. I do personally go Euro Step to do the food play, but I know people pronounce that differently too. I don't want to get into Greek food politics here, but GYRO Step, anywhere you find podcasts, you will find us. And yeah, we break down Bucks every week, usually more than once a week. We will, and we always do Wednesdays. So we say hump day is ours. We own hump days. So look for a new pod breaking down game 1 on Wednesday morning.
That's Blue Wire family right there. This is Mafia. Go support our Blue Wire fam, except for the chase down. Justin Rowan is a terrorist.
Nope.